Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining the webinar today, Math Textbook Conversion and Accessibility Made Easy. My name is Kira Harakel, and I'm a member of the Texthelp marketing team, and I'll be your moderator for today's session. We have a great presentation lined up, and we're excited to get started. Just going to go over a couple of housekeeping items before we begin. So in the GoToWebinar panel, you'll be in listen mode only, but we'd love to hear from you and answer your questions throughout the session. So feel free to type in the questions or chat box of the GoToWebinar panel. We'll be monitoring it throughout the session, and we will have time at the end of the presentation to answer some of your questions. So feel free to test out the chat box now, let us know where you're from, what grade you teach, or just say hello. Also, we wanted to let you know that the session today will be recorded, and you'll receive a follow-up email today with a link to the recording as well as some additional resources. If you'd like a copy of the slides to follow along with today's session or take some notes, I just shared a link in the GoToWebinar chat box. So you can download the slides right there and follow along in real time, or you can also type the URL displayed on the screen right now. So let's get started with today's session. We have two powerhouse speakers for this presentation. First, Paul Brown, our Vice President of Sales here at Texthelp, who oversees all marketing, sales, and implementation efforts of Read&Write, EquatIO, and all our other Texthelp products in the western half of the continent. Paul is joined by our special guest, Susan Kelmer, who is the Alternative Format Production Program Manager at the University of Colorado Boulder. They'll be sharing detailed ways in which you can use EquatIO to save time and frustration on STEM text conversion, even while using MathType to convert textbooks into Word documents. In addition to that, they'll share a quick overview and update on the Read&Write family of tools for accessibility, literacy, and testing assistance. So without further delay, I'm going to hand it off to Susan and Paul.
Thanks, Kira. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Good. Great job. Thanks. It's been a long time since I've been referred to as a powerhouse. I don't think that's ever happened. So joining us today, thanks to Susan Kelmer for joining us not only today, but also helping us really guide us as a company through what we're about to go through today. She was a major help back at Accessing Higher Ground, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that with her in a little bit. So Susan, thanks for joining us.
Sure, it's great to be here.
Susan and I weren't sure where we were going to be doing our webinars from. I'm in Minnesota. She is in Colorado Springs, where I think it was negative, whatever she said, 14 last night.
Yeah, I'm in Boulder. Yeah, it was minus.
I'm sorry, that's right.
Yeah,
Boulder
minus.
it was. So, and this is a look about 15 minutes ago at my backyard. So somewhere in there's a fire pit that I know I'm not going to use anytime in the near future. So we're getting bombed in the Midwest pretty well. Glad we're able to be here. So without delay, EquatIO, first I want to give everyone kind of a background of EquatIO to get up to speed because I know a lot of you may not be familiar with the program. So it was launched 2 years ago in 2017, originally designed to create digital and then accessible math. In order to make it accessible, the first thing we had to do was make it digital. So now that we've got the digital part there, we're starting to build more accessibility in. Predominantly, the first tools used were speech input, so like a math to text type thing, predictive math, like a word prediction, handwriting recognition, and so on. And we were really concentrating on creating math and then collaborating specifically in Google Docs. The original tool that EquatIO was born from was called Gmath, which originally was an add-on inside of Google, but we built it out from there. To us, really accessible from the get-go was really, we wanted to be able to be read by text-to-speech engines using that alt text, which is good, but as we learned a few months ago, there's more that we could do. So to put it bluntly, we really had a K-12 primary focus of this, really for instruction in mainstream mathematics and starting to add that accessibility in. 3 months ago, I believe 3 months ago, at Accessing Higher Ground, which is a great conference in Westminster, Colorado, every November. If you're not aware of it, it's a great one to check out. I always say that it's like the Jedi level thinkers of disability services show up there. So we were there. Now we had a session two years ago where I showed the original EquatIO, and people like Susan liked it. But this time around, we had an EquatIO session, And we wanted to demonstrate some new accessibility features in terms of math inputs that we had, as well as these two new features for consuming. And so what they are, first is a screenshot reader, which is essentially a quick way to have math read aloud if it's in front of you, whether it's image-based or you can grab it or not, didn't matter, you can have it read. The second is to take that screenshot and actually pull the MathML out of it and then be able to paste that into a document like a Word document. To be completely honest, as a company, we weren't really sure how important that second piece was. So what I'd like to do now is to take a look at this and show everyone what that looks like, and then have Susan kind of talk to us about the importance of these things. So here, I flip to, this is a web page, and it's got some math on it. And while the text is accessible, the math really isn't, because as typical, the math is really just an image. So in this scenario, I'm going to load up EquatIO from the bottom of my taskbar here. And EquatIO has some different formats. One will work inside of Google Chrome. The other one will work directly here on my desktop inside of Word and on websites. There's a Mac version as well. So when you license it, you get access to all of those platforms. So what I showed Susan in the group was, hey, here's the screenshot reader. And when I click on this tool, it's going to give me some crosshairs. And all I have to do is pull a box around this equation, and it's going to read it out loud. So I'm going to do that now. It'll take a moment once I let go, and then hopefully you can hear it and see it as it highlights.
H of S equals the integral from 0 to normal infinity of e raised to the negative st power h of t.
Susan, could you hear that?
Just barely.
Okay, I'll try and do better next time. I'll tell her to yell. So essentially, the text-to-speech there read that out loud, which is really great for students who are sighted who need to have this read aloud. So Susan, can you talk a little bit about the importance of something like this tool, the screenshot reader?
Yes, so we do accessible math for blind students and students with some severe limitations or a need for accommodations, but there was no easy way to have students who just have dysgraphia or dyscalculia to be able to read through materials without having to have us do a whole bunch of extra layers of production on it. And with the volume of students that we have, those students are less priority. Well, with a tool like this, it doesn't matter. The student can listen to their math without us having to have done anything extra. So that's a huge leap forward for students who have had this particular barrier that we couldn't really address effectively on a regular basis.
That's a great explanation. For us, we know that for years we've known that when you have someone who's in a testing situation, if they have access to a human reader and they have access to a text-to-speech reader or screen reader, generally they are going to score better with the text-to-speech, the computerized speech, because two reasons. One, there's not that embarrassing, hey, can you read it to me again? Hey, can you read it to me again? Which a lot of students need it multiple times, but they don't want to keep asking. So they can just click on replay here as many times. And then secondly, I don't know about you, Susan, I have no idea how to read this.
Exactly. So, I'm not a content expert. You know, and what I do with alternate format, I'm not a content expert. I'm a formatting expert. And so math is beyond anything that I can just read out loud or to create a long description of. I couldn't do that either.
So human error is something, when we're looking at text to speech, that's one thing, because generally, you know, if you can read pretty well, you can get through it, but something like this can be very challenging, as you said. So for students that need this on the fly, whether they're in the Disability Services office taking a test or on their own computer, they've got it right here, they can access any text this way and have it read aloud to them. So I showed that to you all after I showed all the other input stuff that I'll show later on, and then I did this. I said, okay, well, the other thing that we did is now there's these 3 buttons, and when I click on it, you can see, well, we could do a lot of things. We can copy the HTML, and I was most excited about copying the LaTeX. And the reason for that is copying the LaTeX for us, we know that there's a lot of college professors and teachers and those sorts of folks out there who essentially, they know that language LaTeX. So in here, one of our input methods in EquatIO is LaTeX. So what I do is I bring up that LaTeX, I paste the LaTeX I took, and there it creates for me this math using that LaTeX language. So I insert that, And then this is basically what we've been doing with EquatIO since the inception, is being able to add this in, and then our text-to-speech reader, any text-to-speech reader, can come along and read that alt text that's in the background. So I was very excited to show that. And then this is when you and Sean Keegan hijacked my session, and I had no idea where you were going, but you said, hey, go back to that. So I did. And you said, let's see, you said, go back to that, pull that box around it again. I said, okay. So I pulled the box around it, and instead of having a read, just stop that. You said, pull the box here. And now tell me what you wanted to see.
We wanted to see what you meant by copy MathML, because that's a production tool as opposed to just making it readable. And there were a lot of excited people in that room, very excited people in that room. We wanted to know what that meant, because that's our business.
So then you told me, so click that button. I did. You said, go to a Microsoft Word document. Now, at the time, I didn't have MathType. Now I do. So this is what you guys really wanted to see. I just do Control V, paste in here, and it put the math in there, but you needed to see one more thing. What did you need to see?
Well, we needed to know that it was MathType.
So I double click on it.
Yeah, you just click it or double click it, and you're going to open up the MathType window, and we were like, this is it. This is the tool. This is what we've been hoping for. The angels sang. I don't know if you heard those at the time, but the angels were singing. It was very exciting, and several of us raced out after that presentation and tried it on a machine that had MathType, my own laptop, and we were so excited. It was huge. It really was a big change for us.
Great. So let's hold off there, because I want to bring in kind of the story now of what we talked about after that. And again, I'm going to keep mentioning you guys hijacked my session, and now I'm pretty glad about it. So I did this kind of comparison with Susan, talking about, well, what were you doing and what are you able to do now? And so with the old way, and correct me if I'm wrong at all in any of this, Susan, you said, normally an equation to go in there and to copy it and paste it during the conversion process could take up to a minute, right?
Right. Or longer, depends. You got those big complicated equations. You have to hand type that information in. It's a coding issue using MathType. So yeah, it can take a while. But yeah, a minute is pretty reasonable.
So will you walk us through then? This is what you do on a daily. This is what your staff does. And for anybody that doesn't know, at Susan's office there at University of Colorado in Boulder, they do a lot of this conversion, not only of their own textbooks, but also for other schools that don't have the facility to do it. They'll hire her staff to do it. So this is something you are well trained on. You are one of the top people to do this. Can you walk us through this then, so we kind of get a feel for it, those of us that aren't familiar?
Sure. So we start with an original PDF from the publisher. And so this is calculus, I believe. And this is pretty common. What we find, it is calculus. I recognize the file. I gave you the file, but I'm like, what is that? Oh yeah, okay. So it's calculus. And you get these really complex sort of equations. So if you look in that right-hand column, there's a 3-layer calculation with some text on the side. And so we've got this thing, we know we're going to have to turn it into math, but first of all, we need to have the file in an editable format. So we go ahead and do a conversion using OmniPage to get to a Word version of this file. So if you look at this, it's kind of scary. That's what we get out of this. There's some text in there, yay, but there's also all of this, what was math, and that's what OmniPage does. It goes, well, I think that's what this says, and puts it down there. Nowhere near what we need it to be. So that output that we get is obviously not ready to go to anywhere but editing process. So now you can switch. There you go. And so we'll pull up MathType, and we will type in that equation by hand. And it isn't just keyboard typing. It's selecting items from the menu. You see that MathType has a whole bunch of little tools up on the top. So you're flipping around in those tools to get all of the particular equations and their operators and everything in there the way it's supposed to be. Time consuming and human error is our biggest issue. And then once you've done that, then it's in the Word document as an actual equation. So you can see how we took that one and turned it into what now looks like real math. And it is real math. And for a student using a screen reader, they can access this file and navigate through this math character by character. They can go up and down in the numerator and denominators. They can do all of the things that they need to do and hear it in the right order with the right math. So but that takes some time to write a big equation like the one you're seeing.
And I recall you had one of the last sessions at Accessing Higher Ground. You spent the first half of the session on MathType, kind of showing all this and making sure people were comfortable using MathType to put that MathML in. And it was really a session on MathType. And then I think we took a break and then we came back and then you said, now you may not have to use that anymore.
Well, and one of the reasons that I did that session was not, EquatIO came into it obviously later during that week, but I created that session. I think the title was something silly like, you don't have to be terrified of math, and you don't have to know math to create math in MathType necessarily. But then when I saw EquatIO on Wednesday, I think it was one of the first sessions I was at, I thought, oh my gosh, my session is useless because I can teach them how to use MathType, but they may not need that anymore. And that for us was big. And you still need to know some MathType in case you need to fix things, because it's not exactly, it is a machine operation. And so you always want to check and make sure it's right. And if you know MathType, you'll know how to fix that equation. But the biggest thing was how quickly it happens.
So, and like you said, I mean, this really takes out a lot of that process that you have to do. And I think you mentioned you were, at the time of that session, you gave yourself a couple days to play with it. You hadn't had EquatIO make a mistake in terms of the OCR. So
No.
Let's look at what the process is here. Walk us through now what is possible using EquatIO, please.
Okay, so I still have my extracted Word file because that's what I'm going to be editing in. But I've got my PDF up and I've highlighted or done my little click and drag with the select tool in EquatIO and selected this equation that I want it to copy for me. And so yeah, it starts reading. I don't care about that. I go straight to the three dots and choose to copy the MathML. So it's copied to my clipboard as MathML, not as an image or anything else. So once I have that copied, I can go to the Word file and paste it in. That's it. Control V. It's done. And there it is. And it's right. You can see it pulled the whole thing over, no problem.
Good. So then, and so for us, this is kind of what you were explaining to me at the conference. This is why it's such a big deal. So now if we look at, now we have a better understanding of the old way where it might take 60 seconds or more to do one equation. And now you said, it's 20 seconds, maybe even less, depending on how fast you're going with this. I mean, you literally pull the box, press the button and paste it, and you can keep going.
Yep. Yeah, it's fast. And it's just the fact that we don't have to power through typing in everything and selecting the right tools from the menu, because there is a human error factor there. We don't have to do any of that. And that takes away so much of the pressure from us, not just in the time, but in checking for mistakes and that kind of thing. It's pretty quick. It means that we can produce things 2/3 or more faster than we were doing in the past. So something that would have taken us an hour, now we can do in 20 minutes or less. That's a big deal. Money is, saving money on production is important.
Sure. So we talked about this, and I tried to list, some of the main benefits there. Obviously, time savings, which transfers in really and translates into money when you have student workers, eliminating human errors for the most part, really, keeping the conversion in house, and no backlog with AMAC or ATPC. So tell me a little bit about that. I mean, a typical process before we go in and kind of show what the actual overall cost is when someone sends you a book to be converted. Tell us a little bit about the industry, like what people do. Oh no, we have to get this converted quickly. What do they do?
Yeah, and what happens is we're unusual here at CU in that we have a really well funded processing center, production center, where we can do this kind of work. I have high-end computers. I have high-end student workers. I'm always touting them. They're my bones. I couldn't do any of this without them. But we can do all of the work that needs to be done for our students without having to outsource. That's not true in every campus. And so what happens is then they try to order it through AMAC, which is in Georgia, or the ATPC in California. And their wait list or their time, the time it would take to get it back is 8 months, 9 months, a year. You don't have that time when you have a student sitting at your desk. So we take in that work, we can produce quicker. So we tend to produce within a few weeks. We really, put our noses to the grindstone and get it done. And we can take on several projects, but we're not huge. So we can't take on, dozens and dozens of projects. But I think currently right now we have about 6 in process and are able to keep up with deadlines. So you don't have to rely on a place like AMAC or ATPC. If you can do this kind of conversion in your own office, in your own lab, with using EquatIO and a few student workers, that's going to save a ton of money and a ton of time because you can get it turned back around right away. Think about a test coming in. So we have students coming in to take tests in our testing center. We need to be able to give them an immediate turnaround. I don't get a test until the day or two before the class.
Right.
If it's huge and we have to do MathType, we may be burning the midnight oil. But with EquatIO, I can convert it an hour before the student has to take a test without any issue. So that's a big relief for us.
And that's really for a blind student or someone who's visually impaired. But if you have a digital version of the test and someone is sighted, they can use EquatIO screenshot reader if they have EquatIO up, correct?
Exactly. So if their accommodation is for alt format because of dysgraphia or dyscalculia, they could use EquatIO in a testing environment, no problem. They could get through it. They wouldn't need a reader. We wouldn't have to find somebody proficient in reading math to be the proctor for that student. They could just sit with the computer and do it themselves.
Wonderful. There's a lot of benefits there. When we talked about this, and you told me at Accessing Higher Ground at the table, you said, if this is 6 or 67 or whatever percent, 2/3 of the time, then you explained to me this. You said it normally takes 150 hours or so for you to convert a math textbook into a digital format, accessible format, which normally can take, let's say, $9,000 when you look at the student worker time that it takes to do it. With EquatIO, if you're dropping that down from 150 to about 50 hours, you're dropping that 9,000 down to 3,000. So you're saving $6,000. And I know we've got 700 people that have registered for today's webinar, and it was kind of fun to look at all the universities. It's mainly universities here, but there are also some schools for the blind. There are some people from some K-12 districts. $6,000 is actually for one of the colleges to get a domain license to do this. It costs less than $6,000. So you look at the fact of if you do one book once a year, you've more than paid for it, which is maybe we should be charged more for this, Susan.
Well, maybe, but I'm not recommending that myself.
No. What we love about it is just that there's actually something that this is a problem that this is solving, and it's right here.
Yeah, so, and it's a problem that's being solved that you had no idea this is what it can do. And
I like to say we moonwalked into it.
Yeah, it's very exciting. When I first looked at EquatIO, I was not impressed. I said, this is helping me do what I need to do. And I'm not in the same business of making sure students have access to their, that they're literate with their materials. That's not what I do. What I do is I create materials that will work with their technology to be literate for them. And so anything I can do to shortcut our production processes is something I'm always going to be for. And EquatIO wasn't that in the beginning. And so huge change for us to be able to use it as a production tool to get through the materials we do much quicker, and to make it possible for some smaller campuses to actually do their own work if they want to do their own work using such a fabulous tool. I don't see a downside personally.
That's great. I appreciate that, except the one part that I was the one that first showed you EquatIO 2 years ago, and you said it didn't excite you. So I'm glad that I could bump that up last year. I'm looking now at our chat box from Kira. I don't see any questions coming in, which means everybody's not paying attention, or we're humming along. So if I don't hear anything else, I'm just going to keep moving on here.
Mm-hmm. Hey, Paul, we actually do have a few questions that have come in.
Oh, okay.
Why can't we see them?
They're all in the questions tab. I'm not sure if you guys can see that or not. If not, I can go ahead and read some of them out right now if you'd like.
Sure, please.
Okay.
I don't see that.
Okay. So our first question says, you said that blind students can read the math if it reads out loud, but it does read it out loud, but does it show up in, I'm going to butcher this, Nemeth Braille?
Okay, so we're talking two different things here. And Paul, I'm going to jump all over you because is my thing, right? So for us, what we're doing is we're copying that MathML out as a production tool to create whatever file or format a student is going to need who's blind. So if I'm creating the Word file with MathType. If the student is a JAWS user, we're going to take another step and then go out to MathML. I can use the Word file with the MathML in it to go to Nemeth Braille using Duxbury. So I can go either way with those two things. If a student is using NVDA as their screen reader, they can use the Word file that has the MathType in it. So there's multiple ways to access that information later. The output I do based on what the student is going to need, but those are the three outputs. So MathML or to Nemeth Braille, or if they're using NVDA, they'll just use the Word files that have MathType in them.
Thanks for
Okay.
that, Susan.
Good.
We had a couple other questions about if JAWS was able to read it, but I believe that you have answered that. And outside of that, I think that answers a lot of the questions, but I will continue to monitor it and let you guys know in a little bit if we have any other ones come in.
Great.
Awesome.
You know what, Kira? If you throw those in that little chat box to just Susan and me, we'll see the ones, and then we can go from there.
Absolutely.
Cool. So this is the part where there's more to EquatIO. This is the other stuff that didn't impress Susan 2 years ago. So, but I am going to run through it because, as you said, it's the conversion production piece. That's the part that really made a big difference for you. There's other aspects, as I mentioned in the beginning, for creation, for consumption, for collaboration. So when we are talking to a lot of colleges now, we're pointing out that, yes, conversion is what really helps disability services. Creation, though, is something that's very important for the instructional design folks. Because they're trying to push to get more accessible or digital math and content out there from the professors to the students, usually through that LMS. And then the consumption and collaboration part, that's really important to the students, particularly if you're using Google Docs where there's that live environment that we can add it into. So really, what else does EquatIO do? I want to answer that fairly quickly right now, just to kind of show people, give them an idea of what some of the other tools are in EquatIO. And the reason for this is not just to let you know everything else that comes with it, but so that you can see this budget may not be there for you right now, but there's other areas or other departments in a university that should be looking at this and saying, we can pitch in for this too, because there's so much we benefit from as well. So to do that, I'll jump out here and show you, if you want to download EquatIO, you can do so. You can go to our website, Texthelp, and just look up our products in EquatIO. And if you do try now, it's going to ask you, do you want the Windows version, the Mac version, the Chrome version, or there's a web app, which hopefully I have a few minutes to show you as well. I'm going to show you actually the Chrome version right now, because I've already shown you how this pops up and works inside of Word. What I'm going to show you now inside of Chrome does the exact same things in Word. It's just this is a little unique environment, and I know there are some schools that are Google on here, so I'll show you how it looks here. When I've added EquatIO to my Chrome browser, it's an extension up here. So when I click on it, it becomes a toolbar down here, just like before that toolbar was coming, but really installed on my computer for local work like Word. But here, it's coming through my browser, and you'll also notice I have Read&Write for Google, which is our really, really popular, there's like 17 million users using this literacy tool, and that has that text-to-speech reader. So inside right now, there's a few different ways that I can add math in. I showed you that LaTeX, so if you know LaTeX, you can type it in here, that code, and it'll pop the math out here. The next one I'm going to go to is this speech input. And so speech input here, when I engage that and I click on Start Speech Input, then I can just start speaking, and it's going to transcribe digitally what it hears me say, particularly in math in this case. A squared plus B squared equals C squared. And it's heard me, it's typed that out, and when I click on Insert Math, it's going to take that math that I've inserted, that it's created, and it's going to pop that inside of the document. So to give you an idea of what did we just pop in there, this is an image, and you'll see when I look at the alt text, we have written out A squared plus B squared equals C squared. So if I want to, I can use a text-to-speech engine like Read&Write to read that out loud.
A squared plus B squared equals C squared.
So now that makes it really simple for me to pop that in there, have it read back to me, and that was really kind of that was the first tool before EquatIO, when this was just math. I'm trying to think of the name, GMath, sorry. So we put that in there as an image. One of the things I want to point out before I move on is we have recently, and this is really thanks to hearing from Susan, some other folks with accessibility backgrounds, of making this easier for screen readers and people that are using keyboard shortcuts. So now you can use different functions to navigate through EquatIO, and this is new as of like last week. So you can use like Alt-Shift-Q, I believe it is Alt-Shift-Q will close and open EquatIO. You can tab right. You can shift tab to go left, and then you can click enter to engage something. So we're making it easier for people that that might have more challenges to navigate through EquatIO and use it. And we still have a roadmap of more things we want to add. And when people suggest it to us, it really helps out. If you have EquatIO, the nice thing you can do is down here in the bottom left-hand corner, there are some options you can change, including I want it when I put math in to make it a larger font size. If you want to turn the entire program to either Spanish or French, you can do that. So it'll hear you in Spanish and print that out. All the options will be in Spanish or French. You can also make sure you have all these different predictions, not just math, but chemistry that will show. So there's some nice things there, but also to show you in this drop down or drop up, I guess, is if you want to send feedback, what this will do is this will open up a Google form. And if you have an idea that you want to share with us, just go through here and fill this out and tell us basically what you want us to add or what you want us to consider. And we will definitely do that. A lot of our development comes from some great input from folks like you. So the other insert methods here would be, my favorite is the equation editor. So this is where that prediction comes in. So if I wanted to put something in there, like if I was doing a squared plus b squared, you'll see as I start to type, it's giving me now it's looking at SQ saying, well, that could be squared, that could be square root, that could be square, could be, I don't know what that is, squirt. And if you're using a screen reader, you can navigate down through this and it'll read these options out loud. But when I choose one, then it pops it in. I can put plus for plus, b squared, so on and so forth, EQ, and then click enter and get equals CSQ squared. So same thing, I get the Pythagorean theorem that way. Another one would be formulas. So this one here, like the quadratic formula, a lot of people have seen me use this. Apparently, I don't know much other math besides this, but I pop it in this way. And before I add this in, you can use a screen reader now, which is new, to read this math out loud before you then click insert to put that math in the document. So I'm going to pause here because I do have some questions there that I see coming up. Any plans on developing this for chemistry? That's a good question. So we are adding those things in. So right now, it says if you want to put like aluminum and get that formula, you can do aluminum triacetate, and boom, it pops that in. So you can insert that right away. So hopefully that answers that question. Or developing chemistry ML for the screenshot reader. No, but that's a good suggestion. I'll write that down. CheMML. Susan, is CheMML a thing?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, I'm sure we're probably aware of that.
I will say that a lot of the chem stuff you can do using MathType. But the output ends up being math, and that may not translate quite as well. But yeah, it is a thing. It's not highly used. We have other ways of accommodating for chemistry, but I think definitely useful moving into the future. But yes. Great.
Another question came up here, Susan. Can Adobe Pro be used to make text into Word?
I'm going to assume they mean text.
Yes.
You can do a file, save as other, I think it is. Let me look real quick. I have Adobe open. Save as other, or let's see, save as, export to, I'm sorry. So you can export to Microsoft Word, and you can export to text. To be honest, though, that function is not as good as using a regular OCR engine. So if you have Abby Fine Reader or OmniPage, we are an OmniPage shop here. That's going to give you better output for text. But you can do it with the save as. or the export. The problem is the export brings out a lot of the formatting that you don't want or don't need, that you have to go and fix, which is a lot harder. We tend to omni-page out to a .txt file. So we don't even go to Word. We completely skip that process and go to .txt. In fact, the sample I showed on the slide was a TXT file opened in Word. That removes a lot of the crazy formatting and allows us to re-put in the formatting the way it should be. So
Great.
That's my advice.
Another question comes in of the accuracy for each equation, and there's some folks saying that they've seen some things come in that weren't that accurate, or there was an error in my example, I think. Can you talk about when you're pulling some of those screenshots, Susan, about what you felt? And we don't have any. I don't know that we have metrics on this, but I do see that, and I'll write that down.
And we have noticed just an occasional blip here and there, but what I've noticed is it depends on what you select. And so if you select any text in addition to the equation you're trying to grab, you'll get an errored response. If you work with an enlarged document so that you're just grabbing the math without any, like the comma that's at the end or maybe a figure number that's on it, it does much better. So, but we have not noticed huge problems with the accuracy. It usually comes out right. It is not as good with multi-line equations, but you're entering those, when you're doing those in MathType, you're actually entering them separately anyway. So they're not, because it's usually a comparison. And so they're showing 3 lines. We were doing those in one MathType window when we really should have been doing them in 2 or 3, however many layers there were. And so if you do those individually, they come out fine. But yeah, it's really, for us, we've noticed that don't pick anything that is not the equation. Make sure what you're highlighting is the equation and not.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Last thing, there's a question here, authoring in LMS Moodle. I will show that we actually do work inside of Canvas right now, and we plan to add this to some other LMSs. It's just we kind of have a backlog of things that we want to do. So I will show that in a moment. A couple other things to note here. There's a handwriting insert method. So I can actually, if I want, I have a touch screen, so I would just put this in here and put 3x plus 4x. And if I want, I can put another line down here, plus 7y, and then if I want to change that, I can make that x. So it'll basically look at that and then pop that in. So that's the handwriting piece. And then one of the last things to show here is, and this is really cool, if you're not familiar with Desmos, it is a really great graphing tool, digital graphing tool. So you can go in here and you can put in some graphing components in here. And again, I am not a mathematician by any means. I was a language arts teacher, so this will be kind of obvious. But here, when you're putting in some graphs in, it'll allow you to change the values and then see how that changes the graph. And then you can actually insert that graph into, in this case, a Google document. It would also go into a Word document. If you're in Canvas, it would put it in there. If you're using a Google form, it would do it in there as well. Another thing that I want to make sure I point out so that you're aware of it with Desmos is there's some nice accessibility built in. So if I do here sine of x, they actually have a way that they can turn on what's called audio trace. And I can give you an example. If you're familiar with, there was a case at Wichita State a few years ago where a student who could not access the graphing component of a textbook, they had a lawsuit there. This kind of speaks to that. So you can not only put this graph in and pop it in, but within this program, there is accessibility built in. So if I do Alt-Tab here, it's going to turn on my accessibility. And now if I click on H, it's going to do audio trace. So it's going to give me an idea audibly of what this graph looks like. So you have that built in there as well. You can go to Desmos' site and find out more about the accessibility that's built in, which is really nice. So we've built that component in as well. I do want to get to a little bit of the read and write stuff, so I'll kind of jump through a few more things here. There is a EquatIO mobile. Susan, have you used this at all?
No, haven't played with the mobile at all. I should, but generally I'm too busy doing other things. But works on the computer.
So EquatIO Mobile, basically, if you go to that little QR code, you hit it with either your iPad or your phone, and it'll ask you to log in one time with your school ID that you have an EquatIO account with, which is fine. And then basically what it'll do is it'll allow you on your phone to take a picture of math. So here comes the really iffy part of this webinar. I'm going to turn on my camera so you guys can see the guy behind the green door. So hi guys. Here I have some written out math, and I think that there's a mistake in there, which is good. So what I do is I take my EquatIO Mobile now that I've signed in there, and I essentially just take a picture of this math. So I'm going to take a picture of it, and I think I captured all of it here. So now after I take a picture of it on my camera, now I click on Save It as Math, and now you're going to see it's actually going to it converted that into digital math right from the handwriting. Now, if you look at my screen and look at my document, I'm going to click this insert button. And what it does is it just inserted that math that a moment ago was handwritten into my document as digital math. So the scenario I think would be you're looking at either a textbook or something quick that you want to just put in that document. You can take a picture of it and it'll load it in. Now the accessibility piece here is the ability to edit this math. So a moment ago it was handwritten in front of me. Now I can edit that, and if I want to change that to something else, I want to go down here and make that 2A. I can do that, and I can reinsert that. So a really powerful tool there, particularly maybe for some folks, depending on what type of conversion they're doing. Okay, last couple of things to show here. When you're in a PDF, so if you have a professor that has scanned a PDF, it doesn't even have to be accessible, because here I can either use the Chrome version or the one that's built into my desktop to pull a box around the math that I see. So in this case, there's my little screenshot reader, and I can engage that, I think, and pull a box around that. And same thing, it's going to read that aloud if I want it. It's going to give me the options for the LaTeX and for the MathML as well.
R equals O, M equals.
And there are my options there as well. So this is a PDF that if a professor has shared this through your LMS, there's a PDF there. You can use EquatIO to read that as well. Here is that Canvas piece. So if your university uses Canvas and you have a domain license of EquatIO, you can also add EquatIO in. So when you have this text editor here, you'll see there is an EquatIO button. So if I wanted to use EquatIO to insert math either as a professor adding math, creating it, or as a student responding, I can click on that, and it's, oops, something's wrong with my login here. Never seen that happen. So for some reason that didn't come out well. You should see the EquatIO. Let me try this again. For some reason that's not working. I'm going to skip that for now. So, but just know that that basically works inside of Canvas, and we are right now looking at other LMSs. I think someone mentioned Moodle. I know we're looking at Blackboard. We're looking at D2L, but we just launched this about halfway through 2018. So we're looking to do that with other LMSs as well. Here, this math space is a tool that's actually built into EquatIO if you want to create your own content. So essentially, a professor could create his or her own worksheet, share this out, and then students would get this either through Google Classroom if you're using that, or you can just share the link as an email and students would get their own version of this. They can use EquatIO to answer this right here. This is an example of a Yuhaku puzzle that I put in there. Last couple things here. We do have some great videos on our YouTube page that'll walk you through how to use it. If you go to training.texthelp.com, there's a place where you can take a free course to go through and learn most of the aspects of EquatIO. We continue to add to that all the time, but that way you can learn it on your own. It's self-paced, totally free. So that's a good way to do that as well. And at this point, you've seen most of EquatIO. I haven't shown much else inside of Microsoft Word, but pretty much everything I've done here you can do in Word as well. So I want to go back, and we do have a couple other questions that that I think we can answer here. Wrong way. So Susan, what are your students using for reading the Word doc if they don't use a screen reader?
So usually CAR. Yeah, they're using Central Access Reader. if we are creating MathType files for them, they're using CAR for that. We don't have very many right now. I think maybe 2 students are doing that, mostly because they don't want to have to learn this new thing. It's one more thing. They have to navigate to it. It's a little bit more complicated than they just want to get through their basic math class, which is the value I see in EquatIO, that they'll just be able to do this on their own with that toolbar and not really have to have us creating, in-depth MathML files, because they'll have access to everything that they need. There was a couple other questions up in here. Somebody was asking if it could be used with my math lab. And so because it's a screenshot tool, it'll work in anything that it can see.
It
so
does.
It can be a Word file, it could be a PDF, it can be some online portal, it can be an HTML file, it can be an image that you found on the internet. It doesn't matter because it's a screenshot tool. So that's that question. That answers that question. Somebody else was asking, does this tool output a description of the equation? And I can't open EquatIO now because I'm using the wrong screen. Paul, can you open yours up again?
Sure. Open up EquatIO.
Yeah, and find us a, there you go. Just use that one. Screenshot that and do the 3 dots, and let me see what else is in there.
Screenshot this here.
Yep.
X equals the fraction with.
Oh, you're in Chrome though, right? Not in Word.
That's correct. So the Word is going to have some
The
more
Word has
options there.
additional options, and I think one of them is to take that out, maybe. Let me go ahead and do your thing.
Yeah. This is where I'm going rogue and have no idea what's going to happen now.
Right.
Let's see. So here I am.
It's all an experiment, right?
Yep. I just love it when it's live. Let me unclick that.
There you go. Now let's see what we get. Copy the spoken text. Do you see that?
Yep.
So in Word, it can copy the spoken text. So then you've got your description. So that was that question that somebody asked.
Does it work when it's offline? Yes, it does. Is there a way to turn off some of the tools for exams? Not yet. We know that that's something that we want to add. So the ability to turn certain tools on and off for certain students, we are looking at that possibility for sure. Susan, does this work well with VoiceOver?
I haven't tried it with VoiceOver. Yeah, and the CAR version for the Mac doesn't work. So. Okay. Yeah, so I don't know. I haven't tried that. I don't have a Mac to try it on, but that is something to look at.
All right, last couple here. Is it possible to lasso an entire page? Is there a way to lasso multiple items and then get it rendered? How hard would it be to get this to work like OmniPage or Abby? That is, for us, I know that we've looked at that. That's a much bigger development.
Yeah, the problem with that is you're asking it to OCR not only text, but formatting and math. And we have not yet reached the capability where we can OCR an entire page and get actually exactly everything we need out of it. If you're running OCR now, a lot of times you're fixing language. If it's a Spanish textbook, for instance, you're fixing the math. You're doing a lot of formatting fixes. I don't think we're there yet. Wouldn't that be the holy grail of everything? Because then we wouldn't have jobs anymore. I wouldn't have a job.
Well, that's what John McGowan. So our main developer calls that the magic button. If there's a way we could do that and just click it and all of a sudden the entire thing was perfectly formatted and accessible, we'd love to do it. I think right now we're taking steps towards that. And as I always say, just like with Read and Write, we're building the plane as we fly it. So if we waited until everything was done, we'd never launch it because it would just never be done. And we take a lot of input from people that use it to say, what about this? What about that? And we really look at that and say, can we do it? Is it possible? And we have to kind of prioritize things as well. So keep those suggestions coming in. It's really going to help the development. The graph image, I don't think comes with alt text. Someone just asked that. I don't think that that's there yet as well. I do want to get to the pricing here so people understand it. I've got it up on the screen here. Basically, a single license is going to be $100. To use this, you have to have a domain license, and we're just learning this with our agreements with the third-party vendor. So we don't own everything inside of EquatIO, similar to Read&Write. In Read&Write, we use tools like Abby that we bring in and that sort of thing, and we license them third-party. Same thing with the MathML stuff. So as a result of that, if you're doing math textbook conversion at a large university scale, you've got to get the domain. That said, like I said, I mean, if you're looking at less than 10,000 students, it's $2,700, and between 10,000, 20,000, it's 5,000 and goes up to 6,100. So hopefully, like I said, you do one textbook and even at a large university, you've paid for it one time. I'll show you a link to where that license is, the end user license agreement, if you'd like to see it. A couple things to note though about the licensing. If you are already a school that uses Read&Write and has a license there, you get a 25% discount. So those prices I just showed you, you'd knock that off those, which is great. And it would have to be prorated. So if we reach out to you and you'd like a quote, keep in mind it would have to end on the same date as your Read&Write subscription, and that way then renew on that next date. A lot of people, it's like mid-July when they get their new funding. So you would get like whatever, a 5 or 6 month license now if you wanted, then renew at the same time there. For non-Read&Write customers, again, if you decide to purchase Read&Write as well, which I'll show a little glimpse of here, Susan suggested that. I think it's a great idea. If you do purchase a Read&Write license, you do get that 25% discount. And for you, because you don't already have an existing license with us, there's really 3 different pricing lengths is the word I use. I don't know if it's the right one, but you could go now through basically July when you could have budget funded or planned to renew then. You could do a 12-month now. The challenge there is then you're kind of in next February or March, and hopefully you can renew it then, but you don't want to be left without it during the school year. And then you could get one if you wanted just to clear it from now through 2020, July, and that way you can budget for it again next year and there's no interruption. You could do that as well. So we will be reaching out to everybody to see if they want anything in the ways of a quote or anything else. That hopefully will help. If we didn't show something that's for you, in other words, you're K-12, I know we've got some publishing folks on here as well. Just email us at u.s.info@texthelp.com. As I said, we will try to outreach everyone anyway, but there's different licensing that would apply to those scenarios as well. My team wanted to make sure a couple things that I made sure everybody knew about the YouTube videos, that self-paced online course that, again, training.texthelp.com. And then for me, I don't think we talk about this enough, particularly with colleges. We do offer a 3-hour webinar. It's $600, and I have to tell you, there's an outside person that does it. She is phenomenal with EquatIO. We don't even keep the 600, so I'm not putting it up there because we're trying to like gouge people, and it doesn't seem like a ton of money. It's not, but what you get for it, it really accelerates your understanding and your use of EquatIO. Your staff can sit for 3 hours with her. She will walk through every aspect of it so you are very comfortable with it. If you're going to do a domain license, I would highly recommend up front that you do that. You could argue you'd want to do it down the road as well, but definitely it's a great way to kick that off. So a couple things to know. If you want to look at our EULA, our end user license agreement, you can go here, text.help/M in MathBook. In other words, everything is lowercase except for the M in MathBook. So text.help/MathBook, and you can see it all there. As I said, we will follow up. You will be getting a closed caption recording link of the webinar. It may take us a day or so to get that totally done. We want to make sure that we close caption that first. If you'd like quotes, we'll reach out to you if you want one of those. If you want to do a webinar like this with one of our sales team, we're happy to set that up as well. So if you want to bring this back to your staff and do that, let us know. We're happy to set that up. And then if you've got some meetings you're coming to, a lot of times we present at AHEAD chapter meetings or conferences throughout the spring or whenever else that is. On Read&Write, we're happy to come and do that with EquatIO as well. And then we will be presenting and exhibiting at CSUN and AHEAD. So I think it was Cheryl at Ivy Tech, who asked a couple questions yesterday, and I wanted to make sure I added this for her, just so you did know. As I said today, some of the recent additions for development are we added in the screen reader access for the math before you insert it into the document, those prediction options as well. We've made it easier to navigate using the keyboard. And also, this is kind of interesting. So recently, if you're in a Google Doc and you have MathML that was created there, or I should say, yeah, MathML that was created by MathType, you can extract that back into EquatIO and we can edit that. And because we're able to do that, the exciting thing is in our development right now, and I know a lot of people have asked us about this, right now you're using MathType in Microsoft Word. Will you need to continue to do that? And our answer is no. You will very soon, we're hoping before the end of the school year, be able to use EquatIO to edit the EquatIO formula that we put in there as MathML. So you won't need to open it up with MathType. You'll just be able to use EquatIO to either create that or to edit that math in both Google Docs and in Microsoft Word, which I know is basically the format most are using.
Paul, that is a big change and a valuable change, because the new version of MathType has been bought. It's basically been bought by a company that wants to make money off of it, but they haven't added any features. In fact, they've broken some, and we're having some struggles in output. With our eventual output to MathML, it bogs down, crashes. So that's an important step for you guys to take, because it eliminates us paying for a subscription for a second product just so we can insert the math that we captured from EquatIO. So if we can skip that step, that saves even more time and more aggravation.
Well, you can pat yourself in the back, you and Sean, and also Philip Voorhees, who kind of caught my ear at the meeting too, to say this is really important to do this. So we're able to do that. We think we're working on it right now, and that's the beauty of getting the feedback from people that need this for a specific purpose. We can usually make that stuff happen, and so we're happy to make that happen. But again, we appreciate your input on that, Susan, because it helped make that happen. There are a couple other questions. I'm going to actually probably respond to those people directly after the fact, because I do want to get to one last piece here. Susan said as long as people are on there, you probably need to show them Read and Write. And the reason is, when we are at Accessing Higher Ground, a lot of people would say, that's great. What about, are you doing text conversion? What about that? And a lot of people that were in your session, the second one, said, I need to look at Read and Write Gold again, which tells me if they're calling it Read and Write Gold, it's been 4 years, because now it's just Read and Write, and it covers many platforms. In higher ed, the important ones are Windows, Mac, and Google Chrome if you happen to be a Google campus. The other ones don't worry so much about. They probably don't do exactly what you think they would do. But Read and Write now, it's an annual subscription. It includes all the platforms, specifically those 3, and they're all under continual development. So if you look at the Windows and the Mac, a couple things to note. Besides the fact that we continually develop both of those platforms, they do provide PDF access. They can often access a lockdown browser like AccuPlacer. Great story out of Kansas City, Kansas Community College, with Robert Beach saying they had students taking the AccuPlacer and they would get 1 score, and then they would use Read and Write sitting on top of it to read it, and they would get a way better score. So the test itself really wasn't gauging what they knew, it was gauging their disability. Deep tools for more specific needs. So if you have students that do have some visual impairments, there's going to be more on the Windows and Mac version than there is in the Chrome version. It does not require internet to use, which I know is very important, because I think some of the other tools out there require that your internet is on. Is that right, Susan?
Yes, that's pretty much it.
You don't need to scan, but if you do, we've got Abby Scanner built in, which is great. For the Chrome piece, if you are a Google campus and you have not looked at Read and Write, you absolutely need to. When we went into Susan's campus back in December, shortly after Accessing Higher Ground, I didn't really know that you guys were Google until we walked in there. And the tools inside of Google that I'll just show really briefly, they are so integrated and so easy to push out, so much easier than what you're probably used to. We built AT really into everything there. We also, in the Google Chrome version, have an EPUB reader, which is great. I know that you said that was pretty important to you, Susan. And it literally, because it's a Chrome extension, literally your IT staff they can install it in 10 minutes. They can push it out to everybody really, really quickly. So it's been around for about 5 years, almost 6 years now, 17 million users, and it earned us Google's Global Technology Partner of the Year award a couple of years ago out of 350 companies. So I'm not going to do too much of a dive today. I'm just going to show you briefly. But if you want to do a deeper dive to see more of Read and Write, on February 21st, so I'm doing it same day of the week, same time, because this worked out really well, 3 p.m. Eastern. You can go here. It's bit.do/R W 19. bit.do/R W and I'm going to do kind of an hour-long overview of all things Read and Write. So you'll be able to get caught up on there if you're looking for a new screen reader, or if you're considering EquatIO and want to have something that works really well with it, that'd be a good opportunity. So if I just showed you a little bit about Read and Write, a couple things here. As I mentioned, there's that toolbar. This is the Chrome version. So if you're a Google campus, you can actually push this out to everyone. So the text-to-speech that you saw with EquatIO, that's built in there. There's some picture dictionaries, word prediction, great tools here. Dictation is built in, and it's built right into the browser. So anywhere a student logs into Google, opens up a Google Doc, it's there. Same on web pages. So here I am on a web page. I can have that easily read aloud to me. I can do that highlight and extraction with different colors into a new Google Doc. So it's great for note-taking, exploring, that sort of thing. This is a picture of if you wanted to have the EPUB read with the Google version. You can just open up an EPUB from Google Drive, and we have lots of tools that work inside of there. If you are using a PDF and you're using our Read and Write browser, we've got the tools built right in. So this is right inside of Chrome. You can have the text read, lots of tools in here that are great. If you have inaccessible text coming through maybe your LMS, the nice thing here is you can use that screenshot reader. It does a pretty darn good job of, even with all these underlines and everything else, of screenshotting that and reading that as well.
Discussions of this question in the literature have equated a negative answer with the belief that.
So really, really nice there. And also, if you happen to be an Office 365 campus as well, and you're using Google Chrome as a browser, you can actually use Read and Write for Google Chrome to access Office 365 documents here. A lot of universities are both, so it's good to know that if you use Read and Write for Google Chrome, it'll work in Word as well as Google Docs. And then the only other thing to mention here is when you load up like our desktop version, there's two different versions. One is really, really complex. I should say it's very robust. That's our 11.5, and it's got like 600 and some different options in it that really can cater down to a very specific need. The other one, version 12 that I'm showing you here, is a more simplified one. It's got that scanning built in. It has the screenshot reader. It works on basically anything in your desktop, and that can be locally installed there. It has some visual tools, so if I wanted to have something like a color overlay, I can do that as well. So there's a lot of great tools, and this is the one where I think I mentioned if you were using something like the AccuPlacer, let's say the AccuPlacer would look kind of like this. Well, I guess it's not going to because it's in that mode, but you could use it basically that screenshot reader. It would sit on top to read those questions aloud. So it's a very full complement when you're on the desktop to either Mac or a PC in Microsoft. And again, I'm going to go through that more in detail in, I guess that's 2 or 3 weeks time. So, and I'll give you an idea, basically, my team wanted to make sure that I mentioned a couple things. Of course, the licensing, here's the Read and Write licensing. Similar to EquatIO, it goes by 1 to 10,000 students, 10 to 20,000, and then 20,000 plus. And what they wanted me to mention is really over the last 6 or 7 years, since we've gotten pretty popular in higher ed, we've noticed that a lot of times it's used as a more universal tool across campus, everywhere from ESL and athletics to veterans to the struggling writers. The main one, though, that we wanted to mention is so many campuses have retention efforts, and that's where Read and Write is looked at as a tool that can really help a lot of students that struggle and may end up leaving. So I did this. This is an example I used locally of Anoka Ramsey Community College here. Their enrollment, 9,000 students, which means about 2,200 freshmen. They lose 1,000 of those freshmen every year who are paying $15,000 tuition each year, which means they lose $15 million a year. And the cost for them of Read and Write was $3,600. And if you can convince yourself that Read and Write is going to save at least one student from leaving, let alone dozens, possibly, it pays for itself 5 times with one student. And so that's kind of the logic that we look there, is it's a great tool for retention, particularly if you can get it in the hands of a lot of students, even through that. The Google version is great because you can push it out to every single student and faculty if you'd like. So we may not have as much time here for questions here. I don't see any questions coming in for Read and Write, but at least everybody has that information, which is great. So as I said, we're available to do webinars, meetings, discussions. You can also contact us directly at u.s.info@texthelp.com. There are 30-day trials available for all products. And if you want to reach either me or Susan directly, please by all means do. paul.brown@texthelp.com, susan.kelmer@colorado.edu.
And I'm really happy to talk to anybody who has any further questions about how we're using EquatIO, and any questions about how we do output overall, or questions about how screen readers are using it, etc. So I'm happy to take those questions anytime you have them. I'm always open about that. We have a really great production process here, and I think it's fair for us to share that with others trying to do the same thing.
That is very kind of you, and you better watch it because you may get a lot of emails from this.
Well, I sent out copies of my alt format manual this morning to 28 people after mentioning it on a listserv as an answer to a question. So I hand it out freely, and it's fine. We're all in the same business, and anything we can do to help each other get through it, I think, is appropriate.
That's wonderful. And thanks for doing that. Like I said, careful what you're good at, but we really appreciate you, Susan, joining us today and really helping us on this journey. I kind of feel like that's what it is. We're going to continue to make this better, but right now we're glad it hits so many important things for you as well as everybody on the webinar. So thank you very much for joining us. Thanks everyone out there. Hope you have a great day and look forward to working with you and flooding Susan's email box.
Yep, and just to follow up on that real quick, there were a few questions that were unanswered. So as Paul had mentioned, feel free to reach out to Paul or Susan, and I've logged all the questions that were unanswered, and we will reach out to you as well if those questions had not been addressed. So we would just like to say a big thank you to both Susan and Paul for the presentation today, and a big thank you to everybody for joining us. As Paul had mentioned as well, stay tuned for our follow-up email with webinar resources as well as with a captioned recording of this webinar. And I hope everybody has a wonderful day.
Thanks, Kira.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.